If you asked what the best BTS song is, you'd obviously get wildly different answers depending on who you asked. However, one of the most common responses you'd receive would be Spring Day, the poignant title track from the 2017 epilogue album You Never Walk Alone. Often jokingly referred to as the eternal queen of BTS songs, Spring Day doesn't have to be your favorite to acknowledge that its impact and staying power are undeniable. At the time of making this video, if you were to look at the top 100 songs on the Korean music chart Melon, you'd find Spring Day there like clockwork. In fact, the song has the distinction of being the most liked song in Melon's history, as well as the longest charting song on its weekly chart, having been there for 369 weeks as of mid-March 2024. That's 7 years, which suggests that Spring Day has been on the Melon chart since the song's debut in early 2017. This is not an accident. To me, Spring Day's enduring popularity goes far beyond the playful meme of its eternal queen status. Rather, there seem to be very clear reasons why Spring Day continues to be popular, and I believe those things lie in the meaning behind the song and the emotions found there. I also believe we are at a point in BTS's history where the song and its emotions are especially relevant and deserve to be discussed. At the time of creating this video, all 7 members of BTS are currently serving out their mandatory military service in the South Korean military. In December 2023, when RM, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, the last 4 members to enter, began their period of basic training, ARMY was quick to chart Spring Day on iTunes and got the song trending on Twitter. This was clearly meant as an expression of the deep longing many of us felt seeing all 7 members having to fulfill this duty, as well as a way to communicate our hope for their eventual reunion. You may have also seen articles about how the cherry blossoms bloomed unseasonably in Korea that day, which further brought Spring Day into the conversation. Again, I don't think it's an accident that many ARMY turned to this song in particular during this time of emotion. In fact, I think it's a great thing. So today, I want to look at why I think the song endures and explore its legacy. Why does it continue to have such relevance, and what lessons can we learn from it that will remain relevant now and into the future? So I hope you'll join me today as I give my thoughts and feelings on the importance of BTS's Spring Day. Number 1, You Never Walk Alone. If we're talking about why this song is important, I think it's first a good idea to discuss the album it can be found on. Following their massive concept album Wings, BTS released the mini-album known as You Never Walk Alone on February 13, 2017, with the music video for Spring Day, its title track, being released 1 day earlier. As a short epilogue, this special album only has 4 songs: Spring Day, Not Today, a supplemental story You Never Walk Alone, and Outro Wings. Each of these songs are very different, but they nevertheless all work together for a common message. Never give up, keep moving forward, someone is here to help. In fact, the album is described that way on their website, calling it a message of warm consolation and hope for those in pain. For instance, Outro Wings encourages listeners to not have regrets and to believe in themselves to overcome their fear. Not Today likewise tells all the underdogs in the world that this is not the day to surrender, and that if they can trust themselves and those beside them, together we'll survive. This sentiment is also reaffirmed in the song You Never Walk Alone, which promises that we have people by our side as we try to overcome our hardships. Spring Day manages to combine all of these sentiments together and to truly embody the theme of the album. If the purpose of the album was to offer hope and consolation to a generation in pain, and to make good on the sentiment that none of us ever truly walk alone, I think its title track sums that up perfectly through both its lyrics and music video. The song acknowledges the pain and the hardships that exist in life, but it also encourages us to remember that no darkness, no season is eternal. The final lines of the song offer a clear change from the sentiments expressed earlier. While there is originally a sense of loneliness, the end of the song promises that if we wait a little longer, the cherry blossoms will bloom and we'll all be reunited again. It's no coincidence that BTS performed this song many times during online-only concerts throughout 2020 and 2021, often using the line, "Please stay at that place a little longer," as a promise to ARMY and to offer us comfort. Again, it's also no coincidence that this song has been used for comfort during this time period in which BTS has had to leave us. To me, that's the power behind Spring Day's sentiment and the beauty behind You Never Walk Alone as an idea. These things are an acknowledgement of pain and a confession that sometimes not all problems can be fixed. They're a promise that, even if these things can't be changed, someone is there to comfort and console us and walk the lonely or difficult road with us. In fact, that sentiment itself is a line from A Supplemental Story You Never Walk Alone. This melancholy beauty personally speaks to me for reasons I'll discuss a bit later in the video, but it also speaks to people on a broader scale, especially in Korea. This is because it taps into something that is very essentially Korean, and which I believe describes a concept many people can relate to, even if they're not Korean or do not themselves have a word to describe it. Number 2, the concept of Han. What makes this song special on an already special epilogue album is the melancholy yet beautiful longing that makes it both sad and hopeful, both sentimental and full of the ability to move forward, both full of pain and full of hope. In Korean culture, many of these emotions and the strange beauty they hold can be summarized by the concept of Han. While I can't personally speak to the concept of Han, its cultural and social impact, or its presence in BTS's music, there are many ARMY who can. One of my favorites comes from an older Reddit thread discussing BTS's unique ability to imbibe Han into their music and why it's so impactful. I'll include its link and any others I've used for research in the description of this video. To summarize the points made by the original thread, Han describes the emotional combination of and journey through complex emotions such as sorrow, nostalgia, anger, pain, and hope. These emotions often act in tandem to describe feelings of being wronged and being powerless to do anything about this grief. Instead, Han almost seems to encourage exploring these emotions and eventually arriving at a place of hope for the future. It seems that Han is meant to be experienced fully, acknowledged unflinchingly, and processed emotionally in order to arrive at this place of hope where you can let those feelings of Han go. My understanding of Han is that it's complex and extremely profound, experienced both on a personal level and on a larger societal one, and also that it shows up frequently in Korean media and art. As art in and of itself, I think Spring Day brilliantly portrays both of these things, using the boys' personal feelings and stories to convey lost connection in their own lives, as well as turning these emotions outward into the larger world. Of the many themes portrayed in the song and the video alike, one of the most prominent is the longing brought about by time and distance. The song's opening line is, "I miss you," a line which doesn't seem to be directed at any one specific person or thing, but is expressed in a wider, sadder, and more complete way, which makes it infinitely more relatable. For example, I first listened to Spring Day during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, a time when the lessons we can get from Han as a concept were especially relevant to people. To me, the prevalence of Han in Spring Day is even more highlighted in its music video. At first glance, the video may not seem as complicated as other BTS music videos. In fact, most of it takes place in seemingly normal places. A train, a laundromat, a motel room, a field. But the imagery of the video and the lyrics of the song weave together a message in this very understated way, conveying the notion of hopelessness, despair, and the tragedy that comes from the apathy of the world. BTS songs are often about recognizing the plights of those ignored by society. In many ways, I feel like you can see the journey of processing Han present in their own musical eras. Here in Spring Day's music video, we see it develop even further, and all of these emotions are played out in these various images. Some of these images might be easily missed on first glance, but because of BTS's desire to give hope to the hopeless, it's not surprising that this video would draw from two tragedies to tell this story and convey its Han. The first being the fictional tragedy of a town called Omelas, and the second being the real-world tragedy of the Seoul ferry disaster. Number 3, the references. Obviously, Spring Day is made up of a lot of parts: the lyrics, the production, the haunting melody, the beautiful dance, and the music video. And, as its enduring popularity has proven, it's even greater than the already incredible sum of these parts. I believe part of what makes Spring Day work so well is the various references in its lyrics and its music video. and one of the most prominent examples is Omelas. Omelas shows up explicitly in the video rather early on. During the first few verses, sung and rapped by RM, he exits a train car and arrives at a motel bearing the name, whose sign claims no vacancy. It seems to be heavily implied that other scenes in the video, featuring the group all together, are taking place in a room in this motel, where they can leave the troubles of the outside world behind and exist in playful harmony with one another. However, later in the video, Jungkook, previously seen sitting on the train, finds himself running through the Omelas motel and finding it dark, desolate, and empty. His friends seem to be gone now, and even before this moment, their happy times seem to be tinged with a layer of sadness, as if acknowledging that this happiness might be temporary. In general, Omelas is a reference to a short story by science fiction author Ursula K. Le Guin entitled The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. The story centers on the fictional utopic city of Omelas, which the reader is encouraged to imagine however they see fit to conjure up an image of an intelligent, happy society. However, the reason why Omelas is so happy is because one child is made to live in constant misery. If that would ever change, the happiness of the rest of the city would vanish. Citizens of the city learn of this when they come of age, and most, although initially horrified, come to accept it as a necessary sacrifice, one person's misery to ensure the perpetual happiness of the many. However, some people learn this and choose to leave instead, the ones who walk away from Omelas, who depart the city and are never seen again. The story is extremely short, but it manages to yield many different interpretations and theoretical questions, many of which are extremely relevant to Spring Day and to BTS's message as a whole. Is suffering ever justified? What is the moral obligation of society regarding the suffering of individuals who weigh against the greater good? Who defines this greater good, and what if society's definition doesn't match our own, or if the socially accepted good isn't actually good at all? What is morally demanded of us in that situation? It also begs us to ask what we would do in this situation and why. Would we stay in Omelas, acknowledging that sometimes terrible things lead to better ones? Or would we leave, if we even can, knowing that leaving doesn't actually do anything to help the situation, but at least means we don't benefit from it? Is there a right answer in that situation? Or are they both futile choices that ultimately don't benefit anyone? I'm not going to dive deep into these questions and themes here, mostly because I want to do an entire video about the short story at a later date. But for now, suffice to say that the themes of society defining good and bad in ways that often seem at odds with what's actually right and wrong is a big theme of BTS's music. Thus, it's no surprise that they reference Omelas in this video and lean so heavily into its themes. The music video shows them sharing good times in the motel bearing Omelas' name, time in which they have each other and don't have to worry. By contrast, the world outside is cold and desolate, as their references to the dystopian film Snowpiercer imply. But when they brave it together, they can start to see the possibility of a spring thaw after all. I find it interesting that they chose to reference both the utopia of Omelas and the dystopia of Snowpiercer, another story in which some people benefit from the suffering of others, as if to show that a paradise for some is a hell for others. In so doing, especially with the song's sorrowful lyrics about being stuck in perpetual winter and hoping for spring, they make a commentary on what it's like to be locked into a suffering that no one else cares to end. Not only does this relate tremendously to the feeling of Han, as I discussed earlier, but it also ties into the other main reference in the music video, the aforementioned Seoul Ferry disaster. Theories about Spring Day referencing the Seoul Ferry have been around since the song's inception, but in 2020, the group themselves and one of their producers seemed to imply even more heavily that this was the case. Many people before me have covered this topic with more depth, sensitivity, and research than I myself can provide in this video, and any real discussion of the topic would be better suited for a future video about Spring Day anyway. However, I'll include a brief overview of the events here too, as I think a basic understanding of them is important to understand why Spring Day's message is so vital. The incident in question occurred on April 16, 2014, when a South Korean ferry boat called the Seoul capsized and sank, eventually leading to the deaths of over 300 people, most of whom were high school students. Although reports about what happened are conflicted to this day, part of what makes the sinking of the Seoul so tragic is that much of the loss of life seemed to have been preventable. In the aftermath of the sinking and the tremendous loss of life, public outrage subsequently centered on this fact, as well as the apathetic attitude taken by government officials before, during, and after the disaster. It's this apathy that seems to linger even a decade after the sinking of the Seoul, and something I think BTS tried to capture in the song and music video. Much like the story of Omelas, it seems this disaster represents the societal willingness to ignore suffering in an effort to pretend everything is functioning normally when the exact opposite is true. In their sensitive and heartfelt handling of this topic, BTS points out the tragedy of any society that willingly ignores these things, and in so doing, they seem to walk away from Omelas and take the rest of us with them to a place where we can actually care, a message which is more relevant now than ever. We don't need to be Koreans who lived during the Seoul ferry disaster to feel the emotions here, and Spring Day's impact doesn't have to solely be tied to this event. However, knowing this song was created at least in part to give comfort to a world made weary by this tragedy makes it all the more impactful. To me, one of the things that makes the song so beautiful is that its emotion can be felt at all times and in many different contexts. Like I said at the beginning of this video, we can listen to this song as we watch the BTS members enlist in the military, or we can hear it during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, and the emotions resonate despite the very different circumstances. We can listen to it with the Seoul ferry in mind, or think about it in the context of our own personal losses, or relate it to missing distant friends in our own life, and the emotions still manage to come through. To me, it's the fact that Spring Day has an emotional impact that makes it so special, even when that emotional impact looks different depending on your outlook. Number 4, sincerity. Over the past few years, it feels like a lot of media has felt somewhat insincere to many people. I don't mean that it's made carelessly or without effort, or that people don't care about it. Rather, I've seen a lot of discussion about how certain types of media either seem afraid of deeper emotions or just unwilling to portray these things with any great depth. Whether or not you agree with that idea, I think you might be able to think of popular examples of this phenomenon. But more recently, I feel like there's been pushback against this type of insincerity. I've seen people begin to complain about the pervasiveness of glib humor in media, the lack of being able to discuss hard topics or ideas without debasing them somehow, and the inability to show real emotion in both real life and in the things we love. In short, I've seen a lot of people who seem to be hungry for deep emotion in our culture and society. Perhaps you might even say that they crave a sense of Han. In a world that craves this, I think it's natural to want to see these things in media and to seek them out where we can. For that reason, I feel like BTS's music, and especially songs like Spring Day, are the antidote to a world made weary by insincerity. I also think this is one of the many reasons why BTS and their artistry is so beloved, and why it's so worthy of being explored. This is something I discussed in my previous video, all about why I think BTS is so worthy of being analyzed, and why I think their messages are important. In that video, I talked about BTS and what they, their message, and their music means to people, and I think Spring Day is a very clear example of that. Whatever meaning we each individually take away from this song, the fact that it lets us explore complex emotions is special in and of itself. Turning again to that Reddit post I mentioned, something I really appreciate about the original poster's analysis is that they also describe BTS themselves and their story as having a great deal of Han. They postulated that this is part of the reason why BTS has resonated with people so deeply and why they've overcome many of the obstacles set before them, an attitude I agree with. I've always been impressed with BTS's sincerity, as well as their willingness to deliver sincere messages with unflinching care and consideration. I've never cried so much in my life as I have over the years of being a BTS fan. Happy tears, sad tears, cathartic tears, and everything in between. And I don't think that would have been possible without BTS's sincerity and the sincerity of their music. Like I said earlier, while these songs have a lot of parts, I believe sincerity is a huge factor in why many of these songs have such staying power. Many of these songs don't just exist to be catchy or flashy or have interesting music videos. Rather, they exist to help people, give comfort, and help improve the lives of people who otherwise need these sincere messages of hope and consolation. I believe Spring Day is chief among them because of its great sincerity and the emotion found within it. It exists as a song about tragedy, injustice, and grief. It discusses the unfairness of life and explores feelings of loss. But, true to the feeling of Han, it's also a song about renewal, healing, and hope. And, at its core, it's about friendship, which is where the song really resonates for me personally. Number 5, my own thoughts. I've brought up a lot of examples of why I think Spring Day works so well, from the sincerity in its lyrics to the references in its music video. But I think there's one central message that cements its power and proves why it's the perfect title track for the mini album it appears on. It can be summarized through the shots we see in the music video of all 7 members of BTS together. It's portrayed in various parts of their choreography. It's as clear-cut as it comes. Even through the suffering and the pain, they're together. Whether it's enduring hardship or finding hope, they never walk alone because they're bound together by friendship. In fact, throughout this video, I've discussed how the song is about longing, but something I admire is that this longing is entirely expressed in a platonic sense. There is a desire to see and meet another person who is identified solely as a friend, both in the conclusion of the first rap verse, "How much longing must fall like snow until the spring day comes again, friend," and the later bridge verse, "You know it all, you're my best friend." As I said, it's also present in the music video, especially later in the song when the members walk forward as one. In an article for Rolling Stone India, writer Riddhi Chakraborty interprets the final scene of the music video in particular as representing, quote, "a new journey with their friendship as their salvation," end quote. And honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's everything I've mentioned so far rolled into one idea. They've come through their Han and are unafraid of facing whatever comes next together. Stories about friendship aren't exactly rare, even just in BTS's body of work. But in my opinion, it feels like stories about friendship are sometimes treated as less important than other types of stories, or that friendships aren't taken as seriously as other relationships tend to be. So, to have friendship and platonic love be at the core of a song as poignant and emotional as Spring Day is beautiful. I'd even take it a step further and say that Spring Day being about friendship is a big part of why it works so well and is so enduringly popular. Rather than have the message of longing be one of generic love, it lends what some critics refer to as maturity, an ability to recognize the suffering of others in a way that is not always prevalent. Not everyone can relate to the longing for a romantic partner, but I think everyone can relate to the longing that comes from losing people in general, or even losing yourself. And I think everyone can be sustained by the hope that someday things will get better, whether that means that your pain will be healed, your hardships will come to an end, or that something that matters to you in your life will come back when you need it most. That's why this song being used in performances throughout 2020 and 2021 was especially poignant, and I believe it's why so many armies are turning to it for comfort during BTS's military service. Just like the song says, we need friendship, platonic love, and deep, sincere connection, and we need those things to remind us that the spring day will come again. I've been working on this script for a few weeks now, and during that time, Spring Day has continued to do all the things I've spent this entire video discussing. In mid-February 2024, the song officially became the most successful song in the history of the Melon Chart, adding to the records I've already discussed. All of this just a few days before the song's 7th anniversary. Maybe that 7 is a coincidence, just like it was probably a coincidence that the cherry blossoms bloomed in South Korea when RM, Jimin, V, and Jungkook began their military service. Or maybe Spring Day really is the eternal queen. I'll let you decide. All I know is that Spring Day is important and valuable. It carries with it important messages. It discusses valuable themes. And it resonates with people in a way that makes it enduringly special. In a 2021 Rolling Stone article ranking the 100 best BTS songs, Spring Day comes in at number 1, and I feel the accompanying description does an incredible job of summarizing everything I've tried to say thus far. The perennial sentiment packs an emotional punch that's universal, transcending country, culture, and language. And the bud of hope BTS offer at the end, "The morning will come again because no darkness, no season can last forever," is the reason they've cultivated a garden of blossoms. It's a beautiful sentiment, and I think it proves that, no matter what, Spring Day will endure, and rightfully so. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you feel about Spring Day, and do you think it deserves this enduring popularity? Do you have anything to add to the discussion about the phenomenon of Han? What does the song, and any other songs off of You Never Walk Alone, mean to you? I know I'll be discussing Spring Day and its related media a great deal on the channel, so if there's anything else you'd like to hear about the song, don't hesitate to let me know. Until next time.